In part 2, we'll be going over stages and gameplay, as well as over our DLC picks. Can't include all 4 members of the Fantastic Four? Well, we can have all 4 at once. And given that the Super Skrull was recently given a mini-series, I think he got a shot of relevancy to be considered. I didn't forget Shin Megami Tensei as itself, so I brought in Nahabino from the 5th game. The series is absolutely huge in Japan before being picked up internationally, and this is a chance to bring in even more fans. This section of the video is going to be dedicated to listing off 6 stages going to be included. Obviously, there will be more, but these are the ones I wanted to highlight, including a crossover gimmick. If you're an awesome person who played awesome games, you remember the real best LEGO game ever made. And should know that New York should definitely be a stage. It can take place during a parade with Marvel and SEGA characters as big balloons in the background. Yeah, Green Hill Zone is everywhere, but it's the Sonic series' most popular stage. The area is no stranger to being invaded by robotic armies, so imagine there's a full-scale Ultron invasion going on in the stage, making the place look a lot more like Sand Hill. Maybe even a Badnik vs. drone battle taking place if Eggman is being played. The X-Men should be included because it's an iconic location in the Marvel world. LEGO game footage not related. It was literally the first thing that showed up when I was looking for game footage. Perhaps in the background, Chaos, who is technically a mutant Chao, is holding the place up because as your characters are fighting, the place is getting damaged. Even if Amigo isn't in the base roster, Samba Studios could still be included. It's a nice vibrant area that could be fun to fight in. Perhaps Gwen Stacy and her band are playing for the crowd with Amigo and his gang. A nice, intimidating place to battle in, perhaps even for a Thanos fight in story mode and classic modes. A crossover idea for the stage is that Beat and his gang, or just his gang if Beat is selected, are causing a ruckus by spraying graffiti everywhere. There could be a fight within a Puyo Puyo box where there are falling beans everywhere, and the Mystic Arts users are attempting to keep them away from the fighters to avoid their not being said fight. Given that he definitely deserves to be in the base roster but didn't make the cut because the roster was full to bursting with characters. If he's selected and Samba Studios is the stage, he's replaced in the band with Yamigo instead. He can fight with sound waves while shaking his maracas as well. Miles Morales is Spider-Man. I'll just be referring to him as Miles because Peter's also in the game. Into the Spider-Verse is what made Sony Animations from the worst animation studio to the maybe we treated you too harshly animation studio. But I swear, if they make another scene with a fish getting its butt sucked with a straw, I will cease their existence. More importantly to them, it also made a lot of money and won an Oscar, so I feel like Marvel and SEGA would want him to draw excitement for the DLC. Also, I like Miles, and other people like him too. He's Spider-Man. Vice also deserved base roster, but I forgot. There were so many contenders for SEGA that things got crowded. The original game was universally acclaimed by critics and audiences. Honestly shocking that the series isn't bigger now. Vice would be a perfect fit too. You can bring his dual-wielding action in. MCU stardom definitely made Star look worthy for a game like this. People would also like to see his inclusion. He can also join Rocket as another member of the Guardians of the Galaxy. Also dual-wielding laser guns. This section of the video will go over the music I went in. This will consist of 6 songs playing for about 30 seconds. To skip, go to the number in the corner. Not gonna lie, I just like the design. I don't know why I added him. I'm sure people would like to see him. I chose him to pair with the next fighter. Years ago, SEGA tried to replace Sonic with Rystar, and well, it didn't go as planned. They released it at the end of Genesis' life, and so the game didn't sell very well. People who do remember him fondly, however. He even appears in SEGA's crossover from time to time. He technically even got a spiritual section with the Werehog in Sonic Unleashed, albeit very loose. The next big MCU bad, and also a big Avengers villain, time traveling and multiverse spanning, perfect for a villain in this season's possible DLC story. Given that two worlds are colliding, he'd probably want to conquer it. His name is Kang the Conqueror, after all. If one time traveler is here, perhaps we should get a hero one to counteract him. Maybe Silver comes to warn people of him coming. He could use his own floating magic to combat the others. Also, it would bring together the Hedgehog trio, and that's awesome. This section will go over 4 boss characters who won't be playable, be it scale or the scale being too big of a problem. Galactus showing back up would be pretty cool, and a neat callback to a previous Marvel fighting crossover. They could make him less of a spammer and also give him more attacks than punch and laser. Let him warp up some reality than messing with controls. Solaris. Timelines converging could definitely allow for a return of this monster. He's nothing new to some of these characters anyway. It'd also be cool to hear his Phase 2 theme brought back. I was not anticipating using so much LEGO footage. Anyway, let's fight Eagle, a big sentient planet. Maybe put him in the background and you can attack the pieces of himself he uses to attack you. The Vortex Queen from Echo. She's horrifying. It would be fun to see in HD since she was last seen on Genesis or Dreamcast. Either way, she's never been in HD. Virtual Fighter deserves a slot, given that it's one of Sega's own fighting game IPs, so I brought in Akira to rep them. Given that Akira appeared in Smash Bros. As an Swift Trophy, I think he is iconic enough to warrant a spot. Daredevil is a good pick. He had a TV show of his own, and also appeared in... Actually, less said about She-Hulk the better. He's blind, but that's fine. It won't lead to Sega care out underestimating him. Ulala from Space Channel 5 is a less obvious pick, but she's in several Sega crossovers already, and relatively recently got a new VR game in 2020, with all 3 games having good reviews. Ignoring the movie and whatever she did to Miles, Captain Marvel is a pretty popular character, and whether we like it or not, the MCU shot her into big relevancy. This section of the video will go over Legacy or Echo characters, as in characters who will build off of another character's moveset and be easy to implement with minor differences. Classic Sonic would be slower and won't hit as hard as modern, but would be harder to hit and wouldn't have a boost meter that could drain. Gwenpool would have no healing factor, but she would have better awareness, being Grimson by being faster than Deadpool. Mimi would move faster, but wouldn't hit as hard as Ai. War Machine would move slower, but hit harder than Iron Man. Gum wouldn't hit as hard as Beat, but her spray paint attacks would be easier to combo with, in reference to their original game, her graffiti stat being higher than Beat's, while power stat is lower. Carnage wouldn't hit as hard as Venom, but his attacks would come out quicker and have less cooldown because of his more violent nature. Miss Marvel is one of Marvel's newest and biggest hits, growing insanely popular really fast, and even her MCU show is seen as good. Sonic can even comment on her powers and say something like, "You remind me of the Werehog. Cool powers." I wanted someone that make people go, how on earth did they get that character? Well, Ruby is a jointly owned character from SEGA and Sanrio, the Hello Kitty people, And since Sanrio and SEGA have good relations, I feel like we could get a deal for Ruby to show up. She'd probably prompt even more Japanese sales too, considering the series in Toyland have been going strong there for 13 years. He deserves this after what the MCU did to him in Black Widow. Aside from that, he's a pretty popular character. Like, some people would get the game just for him popular. He probably has some pretty cool interactions with the SEGA crowd about how it'd be better off using the weaponry. Something like, "Hey, let me show you how to really wield 4 guns at once," to Bayonetta. Joe from the Shinobi series is the most prominent hero in said series. He appeared in the previous SEGA crossovers, and every Shinobi game has received good to great reviews. Joe still has presence in culture too, so some people would be happy to see him. This section will go over alternate costume ideas for several characters. A breakout star from the MCU, Loki. He's always been a huge villain slash anti-hero, and now that he's super popular, probably one of, if not the most popular Marvel villains, aside from Spidey's Rogue Gallery, he surely deserves a spot to allow for his trickery. I also want an interaction where he calls Knuckles a dull creature, only for Knuckles to knock the breath out of him in a single punch. I wanted another villain, and few are more terrifying than Mephiles. If a Solaris boss fight is here, he'd make sense to show up. Maybe this is even when Solaris gets added. This DLC story could involve Loki and Mephiles teaming up to get the Infinity Stones, and Mephiles betrays Loki at the end before Loki can betray him. Using the Time and Space Stones, Mephiles summons the Flames of Disaster and uses the Infinity Stones to act as the power source for the reformation of Solaris. Red Skull is Captain America's biggest villain, and recognizable enough to be another villain. Introducing Hydra to this would be cool as well, because they can interact with Gunn, or BD Joe beats them up. Do any of y'all recall a console called the SEGA Saturn? Why am I asking? Because... Saturn, shoo! Guys, Sekita Sanshiro broke into my house, and after he kicked my butt for not having a SEGA Saturn, he demanded me to put him on the roster. For those who don't know, Sekita Sanshiro is a marketing mascot for the SEGA Saturn, and he did so well that the Saturn outsold even the Nintendo 64 in Japan. He's since shown up in many places, meeting people like Sonic and other SEGA characters. If we want the most deep-cut SEGA character from its history, he's one that shows up. I mean, the company's name is the first 2 syllables of his. I'm going to be honest, this is one of the videos I've had the most fun with making, both of them. I make a lot of rosters in private, and it feels good to finally be able to make a video on them. Mario and Sonic will be finished soon, but until then, I want to thank you so much for watching.